And we are live. Good evening, hello everybody, and welcome to Forever Red Devils. If you are new, then welcome. And if you are from the previous channel where we had this many years ago, welcome back. We are officially back and absolutely buzzing to get going with this project. Something that we've been working on for a while, and something that we're really excited to do because it's something we've done in the past. And when we sort of first ventured into our sort of YouTube journey, maybe not something we had planned well enough or kind of knew what we were getting into, but we are back, we've got a plan, and we're going to get stuck into this channel and creating more Manchester United content, which is what I'm really excited about. At a time when Manchester United doesn't give me a lot of opportunities to be excited, this is how I choose to be excited. It's a very tough time to be a Manchester United supporter right now, but you know what they say, through the good and the bad, and we're going to go through some more bad, I think, in the coming months before we eventually get to the good in probably the coming years. But it's going to be an interesting journey, and we're going to be taking you along that journey with us. Keep me up to date on the latest Manchester United news, rumours, debate, discussion, and all of that. So strap in, get yourself comfortable, and welcome to the channel. My name is Stevie P, if you do not know, and Manchester United fan all my life. Been to Old Trafford, watched Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney and Sir Alex Ferguson during the golden years. In fact, during the golden season, actually, we actually won the Champions League in 2008. I watched it in December 2007. Long time ago, but yeah, absolutely avid Manchester United fan. And what we're going to be doing basically is going to be going all in. So, in terms of how this channel is going to work, we are going to be live twice a day during the week. New shows in the morning and in the evening. That is at at 9 a.m. UK time, and then 7:30 UK time every single day, Monday to Friday. The Friday evening will be a preview as opposed to a live show, which will be pre-recorded. In terms of other content, we'll be reacting to press conferences, bringing you the latest press conference news, as well as match reactions, as well as short videos discussing things like, the top 5 Manchester United strikers, top 5, I don't know, Dutch players, the current news and stuff like that, and covering anything else major surrounding the club. So, yeah, I'm going to be picking up a lot of people along the way, trying to rebuild that community we had a few years ago before we sort of turned our attention to a few other things. Now, coming up in tonight's first show, we will be talking about Sir Alex Ferguson, banned from the change room. We'll be talking a little bit about early team news that Erik ten Hag is scheduled to give his weekly press conference or pre-match press conference tomorrow afternoon. We'll get a bit of a better insight as to the injuries and the sort of availability of certain players. Players like Mason Mount, for example, who missed the last few games with a head injury. Hopefully updates on the likes of Kobe Manu, Alexander Garnacho, players who were withdrawn from international duty, for example. We'll also be talking a little about Thomas Tuchel, the fact that he is not going to be managing Manchester United because he has been confirmed as the England coach. Supposedly, INEOS' number one target were they to sack Erik ten Hag. So Tuchel now not being available is a bit of a blow to them with regards to their ten Hag contingencies. We're also going to be talking a little bit about other potential options, and one of the main options who has come out and said that he would be open to a potential move. So lots to talk about as always as we head into the weekend. And now we haven't by the time we play on Saturday, fun fact, it will basically almost be a month until the day until we last had won a game. We are in the most torrid, form that I think I've ever seen. And it's pretty impressive actually how bad the last few months has been. We go back over the last few results, 0-0 against Villa was the final one before the international break. Before that, 3-3 against Porto, 3-0 down at Tottenham, 1-1 against FC Twente, 0-0 against Palace. So the last time we won a game was actually the 17th of September, which ironically was 7-0 against Barnsley. So we went from being 7-0 against Barnsley, our probably best ever game under Ten Hag. Yes, it's against the mediocre opposition, but one of those games where it could have been 10, it could have been 11, and we thought, oh, here we go. We're finally going to sort of break the mold. And we're scoring 7 goals in that one game. We have scored just 4 goals in the next 5 games. And conceded, I think it's about 7 goals in the next 5 games. So, from the highest of highs to lowest of lows, that kind of describes majority of times under Erik ten Hag, doesn't it? And yeah, as I said, things will unfortunately probably get worse before they get better. But you got to believe. You got to believe that somewhere down the line we will eventually, cross into a new era of success. When that might happen, who knows? But it'll happen eventually. It will. It will. We've got to believe it, people. So we do have a poll in the comments, and if you have not voted, please do go and vote, because we're talking about our first story of the day, which is the Sir Alex Ferguson story. So let's get into it, shall we? Alex Ferguson, yesterday was announced that his ambassadorship role had basically come to an end. It was rumored to be a over £2 million a year contract where he would serve as an ambassador in terms of, attending Old Trafford or going around the world, for example, and representing the Manchester United brand. Now, this was controversially apparently been taken away from by Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the INEOS group yesterday, a move which has caused quite a lot of debate. Eric Cantona, for example, came out on Instagram and vehemently supported his old boss, saying that this is Sir Alex Ferguson should be allowed to do what he wants. Well, apparently they're taking it a step further, and the previous manager will now not also be allowed to go into the Manchester United change room after games, as he previously has been allowed to, as being sort of a member of the board and the likes. So a very interesting take from INEOS. Let's get into it, shall we? Because it's an interesting one. In terms of what has happened, this is now being reported to by the Times, that have broken the story about Sir Alex Ferguson after losing his £2 million a year contract. There's also going to apparently being a relook at certain policies and the likes. Now, this over here is a tradition that stems back to Sir Matt Busby's time, where board members, active board members, were allowed to attend the change room after matches. Now, I don't think this is basically an open invite, whenever you kind of want to walk through type of thing. Excuse me. But it is something that has happened over the years. Now, apparently, Sir Alex Ferguson is not actually one of the main people that usually take up this invitation. However, Sir Bobby Charlton was a regular visitor during his time as an active board member, for example. So the offer was always there. Now, according to this article, the INEOS have basically scrapped this whole concept. And whether it is, for Sir Alex Ferguson himself, probably unlikely, but it's more about a policy change rather than attacking Sir Alex Ferguson himself. Apparently, they're going to change the policy basically in terms of limiting people that can go into the change room. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? As Erik ten Hag desperately trying to get the change room behind him, for example, it's an interesting one in terms of would he like to see Sir Alex Ferguson walking into the change room? Would he like to have that support, for example, or is it support? Or is it the old boss who's been so successful now walking around a change room going, oh, you guys are not nearly as good as what we used to be. This is what I would have done. This is what you need to do. And I suppose in general, you probably don't want board members in and around the team after matches and stuff like that. The issue comes with who that affects. It's one thing when Sir Bobby Charlton is in a change room with Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, Rio Ferdinand, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Roy Keane, those sort of players, and you're winning things and things are going really well and you're enjoying the entire vibe. It's a completely different situation when things are going badly. And now you've got these, previous people who, are going to make comments, for example, potentially, or, have their own ideas about what happened on the game. So I would be very interested to know is if this has been an INEOS decision, at the very top, and they've kind of just decided this is the plan, or whether it is a case of Erik ten Hag almost saying, listen, I can't do this. I don't want to have these people in the change room. So it's not gone down particularly well, as mentioned. Eric Cantona came out about it, and Rio Ferdinand came out saying that, taking the whole ambassadorship away, for example, and taking his role with United, saying as follows, saying, if Sir Alex can be taken out, then no one is safe at Man United. Anyone can get it now. INEOS sending a message to anyone in the club. Interesting concept, isn't it? In terms of really trying to drive home your dominance, your position, and to basically say we are the owners. This is a new era, and it's not going to be like the previous one. We're actually going to be very active and make big decisions. And they have made quite a few big decisions, even in backing Ericsson Hog. It's a big decision. Obviously, the stadium is one of the biggest decisions they need to make with regards to how this new stadium is going to look. I actually read a story earlier, by the way, to say that construction of the stadium could start as soon as 2025. It should be about a 3-year project. And so that apparently there is work on it. Apparently they reckon that the cost could be around £2 billion. Now, it's an interesting one, that whole stadium thing, isn't it? It's such a tricky one in terms of weighing up the history of Old Trafford, the theatre of dreams, quite literally the one behind me. And then you look at Tottenham Hotspur, for example, the stadium, and how world-class facility it is, and you're thinking, you've got to get to a facility like that. And unfortunately, it just doesn't seem feasible to be able to get Old Trafford to be a facility like that. You look at the Bernabeu, for example. It's just a phenomenal stadium. So, yeah, but it's a very interesting situation with Sir Alex Ferguson. Now, it's an interesting one because a large portion of the fan base are quite skeptical about the Sir Alex Ferguson relationship with the club. No one denies, what he did for the club and the success he had. But there's also a section of fans that talk about the fact that he was complicit almost whilst the Glazers were, running things and draining money out of the club. And, he selected Sir David Moyes, David Moyes, and he, has been, cozy with all the sort of the board members and all the people throughout the years when the club has not done particularly well. And, he's gotten these opportunities like the ambassadorship, for example, and he's continued to benefit long after his 10 years come to an end. Now, I don't think anyone's ever going to suggest that Sir Alex Ferguson, of all people, does not have the club's best interests at hand. Of course he wants the club to do well. This is his life. This is the dynasty he built, and every single season where it just doesn't go well and things go really badly and United get worse and worse, diminishes from the shine of the club that he really built into the biggest club in the world. But, maybe it's one of those things where long term, maybe it wouldn't be the worst idea for him to almost sort of take a step back. I don't think, for example, you're going to stop seeing him at games. He'll definitely be invited and he'll definitely be a key figure that they'll keep around the club. But maybe it's not the worst idea to create a bit of distance and allow INEOS to try and move us into the future. And I suppose to a certain degree, I think they almost kind of have to, is kind of leave nostalgia at the door, because we've had this 10-year period, basically, a decade of very limited success. And, it was one thing until 2016, 2017, when you're talking about, this team was winning titles 4 years ago. We've got to get up to winning titles and challenging the Champions League. We've become a club which doesn't even challenge for Champions League qualification. How many people at the beginning of the season are basically saying, just top four, that's all we want. We need top four this season. And how unlikely that's looking all of a sudden. So, it's the reality is, as a club, we are so far away from challenging for the league, for challenging for the Champions League, that maybe it's actually time to do away with a little bit of the nostalgia and deal with the reality of we are currently a top 6 club and we need to start putting in structures, making decisions that makes us a top 4 club and then a top 3 club and then a title challenging club. Because it's not a 1-year process, unfortunately, and as fans, we have to be very realistic about this, because we've been so poor for so long and we've done so many bad deals and transfers and decisions with managers and stuff. We're looking at a 3-4 year project before I think we'll be even competitive anytime soon. It's frustration because we were second not so long ago, a couple of years ago, and we've had Champions League campaigns and the likes. But I think structurally we really are seeing the cracks in the club and how difficult it's going to be to first of all fill those cracks and be able to pave a way to Premier League glory once again, and to being at the top and being a challenger. I mean, for example, Arsenal have sorted all of that out, become a major contending club. And the silverware that Arteta actually has won, he did in kind of a bit of a smash and grab season, in his first sort of season involved. Since then, they have consistently challenged for the Premier League, but not gone on to win it and not won silverware. As I said, he won the FA Cup in, I think it was his debut season. Yeah, it was. I think it was. And then, but so I'm saying, still then, haven't challenged, actually haven't won a trophy. And that just shows you how difficult. I mean, Arsenal, as mentioned, are one of the top sides, and they're genuinely Premier League um, contenders, and yet they haven't won a trophy since that 1920 season. So that's how long it's been. And we're going to 2025 next year, and so they're a side that has sorted all their structures and are competing. Got a great squad, got a great manager, got a great playing system, and yet in the last 2 years, Manchester United won more than them. And unfortunately, that is the reality of how difficult it is to win the league at the moment, whilst Pep Guardiola is in charge. Now, the problem is that, other teams are catching up here and there. We're seeing Arne Slot come, for example, and just take to Liverpool like a duck to water, and these things are going really well for him, for example. We've seen Tottenham Hotspur going up and down, but we've seen Newcastle. With the project. Yes, I think it's stuttering a little bit at the moment, but they came in, got the right coach, got the right players, top four, Champions League dream. So teams are making progress, and it's frustrating to see teams like that make progress, like a Brighton make progress. Even like look at what Brentford's happening, and we're going to talk about Brentford in a bit. And yet Manchester United is not taking steps forward. So I do think at the moment it really is a stripping away of every little bit of potential issues within the club structurally, and then rebuilding or re-looking at how it all works and trying to find a much better system that's going to work and try and long-term take us to where we want to be. Now, speaking of that long-term project, a lot of it comes to do with the manager, doesn't it? Now, Thomas Tuchel has been announced as the England manager, and he was reportedly, the top candidate to replace Erik ten Hag should INEOS give him the sack, which we now know he hasn't during the international break. And interviewed obviously Tuchel, asking about other options, and this is what he had to say. He said it was very straightforward. It was a decision for this job, not against anything else. So that statement is very interesting in itself. Basically saying it, there wasn't other offers on the table, and this was about me wanting to become the England manager, not about turning something else down. I don't think he has been offered the Manchester United job. Because I think he would take it, to be honest. He spoke about the fact that he's never managed an international team, and it's something that he is looking forward to. I don't think it's something he really wants to do it. He said they made it clear it's about football, and that got me excited, he said, but then he continued and said, I wasn't sure this was the job for me because the schedule is very different. I always wanted to come back to England. That was my big goal. I think he wanted United. I mean, where else does he go? Guardiola maybe goes at the end of the year or the end of the season, but he's not going back to Chelsea. He's not going to Liverpool. He's not going to Arsenal. So, I don't think he's going to Spurs. United was the team I think he was holding out for, and now I think we basically missed him. I do. I think if Ten Hag had been sacked in the summer and they'd gone after Tuchel, I think he would have taken the job. Of course he would have taken the job. You don't say no to this job. I do think it's the most difficult job in the world, but you don't say no to it. It's the biggest job. It's a job. I mean, it's when the manager eventually gets it right. When the first manager to win a Premier League with Manchester United since Sir Alex Ferguson eventually gets it right, he's going to go down in history. It was the same as Klopp finally getting Liverpool over the line, for example. It's going to be an historic moment, and how many people will want to be that manager or want to have that glory? So there's no doubt he would have taken it. He says that the offer came at the right time, and we found a vision to share. Now I have to live up to it. I know there are some trophies, and I want to help that happen. And basically, he's got an 80 million contract, by the way, so his deal will run until the 2026 World Cup, and then they'll look at renewing it potentially. So it's a very interesting one time-wise for Manchester United, because if Ten Hag were to be sacked at the end of the season, Tuchel would not be available. So your main sort of option is potentially not available, which brings you to the other options. Now, Thomas Frank is a name alongside the likes of a Potter, for example, that continues to be linked with Manchester United. He's having a great time at Brentford, and 51 years old, not young, but not very much in the sort of peak of his career potentially, and he's been a target that's a name that's been linked for quite a lot. Now he was speaking to Talk Sport, talking about the fact that he's very happy at Brentford, but that he doesn't know what the future holds, and basically who knows. So this is the interview, and he said that I've said many times I'm very happy at Brentford. Who knows what will happen in the future? Maybe I stay here for many years. I'm open. Maybe something happens. But first and foremost, very happy. Just working very hard every day to make the club better. He said it's very difficult to predict the future. Who knows what will happen? How many coaches have been in the same club for more than 6 years? Very few. It's the nature of the game. Let's put it that way. So he's right. Managers don't stick around. They don't. Guardiola, I think, is currently the longest serving manager in the Premier League in terms of at one club. Now, he has been at Brentford since 2018. So he's been there for 6 years. He must be looking for a new challenge. I mean, I don't care how happy you are at Brentford. You will be looking for a new challenge. He will be looking for a top 6 club. He'll be looking at a Manchester United, a Tottenham, and a Newcastle. Even that's the reality. He is the next big thing. He's sitting with a 42% win percentage at Brentford, but I mean, the things that Brentford have done under him, and I think the main thing about it is the recruitment's been good. They're producing good players consistently, for example. They're finding good results. They've got a nice style. They've got a clear identity as a team. And so he ticks a lot of boxes in terms of if you want to try and find a manager who can really sort of build you from scratch or can build the culture and stuff like that, that's a lot of the things that he's ticking. It's not just a manager, for example, like a Tuchel or a Mourinho who comes in, plays the same sort of style of football, can do a job to a certain degree, and you kind of know what you're getting. He's far more, seems to be more sort of the coach type, the kind of like Mauricio Pochettino type of vibe, Eddie Howe type of vibe, the Guardiola Arteta type of manager, which is the new sort of brand of manager, isn't it? It was interesting. I was watching Wayne Rooney on the Overlap, and he was speaking about the fact that when he first started managing, he was managing. He was doing tactics. He would let other coaches do practice, and then he'd come in and do the tactics on a Thursday, Friday, for example. And that was sort of the way traditionally things happened. Sir Alex Ferguson wasn't the one running training back in the day. His assistant coaches, Urena Millersteins, for example, would be sort of taking training, and Sir Alex Ferguson would then sort of come in and dictate what's going to do. Now he'd be sort of telling people what to do with regards to how to train and stuff. But these days, we're seeing a whole different vibe where managers are more than just managers. They're far more sort of coaches. And Guardiola, I suppose, was kind of the trailblazer with that. You watched All or Nothing and the likes, and you can see just how involved he is in the day-to-day training and involve the players. And so it's a whole different sort of vibe. Now, Thomas Frank sort of is more of that kind of generation, you feel that he's really thoroughly involved in every single aspect. Recruits well, coaches well, manages well, has the buy-in for the players. So he's definitely a potential option. Other sort of big names is obviously Zinedine Zidane is someone who continues to be linked. There were talks about Kieran McKenna potentially getting the job. We'll have to wait and see how he does with Ipswich, who currently sits with 4 points from 7. They are above the relegation zone, in fairness, but and they've actually, when they went four draws in a row and then they lost the last one, so they've actually been in a pretty good vein of form at the moment. So I'll be very, very keen to see how McKenna does. I don't think you're saying he should become Manchester United manager, but I think that at 38 years old, he's young. I mean, long term, I don't see why he can't become a Manchester United manager if he continues to develop at an Ipswich, gets maybe a job at somewhere else, and continues to sort of build that reputation and get that experience. I always liked him. It was interesting how Mourinho rated him. Everybody then talked about the fact that, his practices and sessions were, very junior orientated, for example, seemed to be very sort of basic. The players with the complaints about him and didn't rate him, and he eventually left. He went to Ipswich, and he's done absolute wonders there. And he's been there since 2021, where they were League One, and they got promoted into Championship in 23, and then into the Premier League. So direct promotions, and he's looked pretty. I think Ipswich have actually looked pretty good. I mean, even in those first 7 games, he's played Liverpool, played City. A big one for him was losing in the League Cup, but they have picked up a couple of results here and there. I think if they go on a bit of a run, they could potentially stay up. So yeah, very keen to see. But in terms of the media thing, now we'll talk about this a little bit more in the morning show, which as mentioned is 9 a.m. UK time. We've got a bit of a crisis on our hands, and that is the injury availability. Right, so some early team news. For this weekend, Manchester United are currently without a number of players, and we are waiting to find out what the situation is, for example, with left backs, with Nassar Mazraoui supposedly being out for a while. We'll get more clarity on that tomorrow. But Luke Shaw, Tyrell Malacia is still injured. We've seen Diego Dalot play a lot on the left. Now, apparently, it looks like Johnny Evans or Victor Lindelof could be in line to playing at left back this weekend, given the crisis, which, by the way, also includes no Harry Maguire, who's set for a period on the sidelines. He suffered a muscle injury at Villa Park. Other injury news is we have to wait and find out what's happening with Manuel Ugarte, who had to come off during Uruguay's draw with Ecuador. And Mason Mount also missed the last few weeks with a head injury. Whether this week, for example, has meant he's back, we'll have to wait and see. And then finally, the other 3 that we need to monitor was Ahmad, Garnacha, and Chloe Manu. They all missed their international break. They all got pulled out because of injuries. So hopefully that was very much a precautionary measure, and that they are good and fit and happy to go, because we need those players. We need everybody we can get at the moment. The nice thing with international breaks, look, they're terrible, especially when you go into them like we did on a very bad note. But the nice thing for international breaks is that Ten Hag has now had a week with, and this is also the funny thing with a lot of the players not playing particularly well. He's got a week with a lot of players who aren't on international duty. Marcus Rashford, for example, yes, he would have had a couple of days away, for example, but he would have been back and working. He's not part of that United squad at the moment, so he's somebody that would have hopefully been a bit quite refreshed and ready to go this weekend. So I think that's somebody to watch hopefully this weekend. Rasmus Højlund got some minutes in his belt there. Christian Eriksen was assisted twice, I think it was last night. So players can leave and go into, and some players, it'll be really healthy environment. Some players will go to maybe international teams that aren't that settled, but time away can do wonders in theory. This is me trying to sort of tell myself that we're going to do well this weekend. I do think, though, genuinely, I think time away can help. I think you leave the environment, you kind of clear your head a little bit, you can go away, you go different places around the world. And maybe this is kind of the break that we need to really come back in, because now coming into this next sort of period of the season, we've got to make this next period count before the next international break. Because after that is one more week of internationals, then we're into that December-January period, and that's when it gets mental. The seasons are defined in that Christmas period. They really are. So it's and if you look at our fixtures, for example, there's some big ones. There's Arsenal, Man City, and Liverpool, of which Liverpool, I think, is our first game in 2025. So if you look at our December fixtures, for example, here they go: Everton on the 1st, Arsenal on the 4th, then Forest 7th, City 15th, Bournemouth, Wolves, Newcastle. So Arsenal, City, Wolves, Newcastle, all big games in that. And then we start with Liverpool on the 5th of January before then going hosting Southampton, Brighton, and then going away to Fulham. So big opportunity. You go and pick up majority of those games. You grab some points, and you got to look at that Arsenal City game. You've got to try and find the points out of those games. But you go on a bit of a run in December. We've all seen it before. You go on a run in December, and you can start to salvage a bit of a bad start to the season, because we've seen teams who've had great starts to the season fall apart in December. Now, we need to basically hope in the opposite, that we've had this really bad start. Can we find a way to salvage the season in December? Can we go on a run? Because there's just so many. I mean, look, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 league fixtures in less than 2 months. It's from the 1st of December to the 26th of January. So less than 2 months, 11 league fixtures. That's almost like a quarter of them. You have a good run there, you get your season right back on track, and that's what we need. But unfortunately, we've got to make sure that by the time we get there, we're in line to hopefully go on a bit of a run and make up those points. Because at the moment, we are not sitting anywhere close to being able to make a bit of a run because we're sitting at a lowly 14th on the table. So we got to try and make it look. The nice thing is early stages. You can win. At the moment we're really 10 points behind Liverpool, 7 points behind City and Arsenal, and 6 points behind Chelsea. But go on a 3-match run now, and hopefully those teams drop some points, and you can try and make it a bit. We try and reduce that gap from 10 points down to like 6 by Christmas. I don't know how. Other results have to go our way, but if you can do that and you've got a bit of a run, then you can get yourself back into that sort of top 4 race, which is 6 points, away. I mean, that's as simple as Chelsea and Villa losing this weekend, United winning, and with 3 points behind them. It can be that kind of easy in theory, mathematically, but we have to wait for other results to happen. And that brings us to a close to our first show of the channel ever, of the new channel. We will be back live tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. So we'll see you guys all over there. Please do smash like on the video. If you're watching this, please do subscribe to the channel as well. Back at the beginning, so on the road to 10 subscribers probably, or tomorrow we'll be on the road for 20 subscribers. But we've been here before, and I've no doubt we'll be able to get our Manchester United community back and running very, very quickly. So people, thank you very much for keeping me company this evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning, as well as tomorrow evening, as well as tomorrow afternoon. We'll also have a presser reaction, so lots to talk about.